we have to take these hadith at face value and accept that they are true. And then we apply them to this UFO story, and we see that this is the jinn that's doing it. So once you know who's behind what's going on, that mystery kind of starts to dissolve.
Previously, people who used to have experiences with the jinn, like they did not have great credentials. It took, like, people could easily discredit their experiences. But now, leading scientists, astrophysicists, they are having experiences, and then this is a very big ontological shock for them when they come to know that, oh, so there is another being that lives on this planet with us, and we were all fed with this kind of materialistic view.
I think that people who have experiences, especially someone of the let's say the credibility of a Michael P. Masters, he was, I think, an evolutionary biologist, if I'm correct. And he didn't believe in any of this sort of stuff. And he said afterwards that he became depressed because it was so jarring and shocking to the worldview that he had that he didn't know how to go on with things. It was so disruptive to the world that he understood, and it changed everything for him.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Incisive Thoughts. And today we have none other than our very own Faruq McDermott joining us again on this channel, because apparently last time, after speaking for 3 to 4 hours, our audience felt that this wasn't enough to cover the topic. So inshallah, this topic is going to be covering what we left off last time. And I hope you guys will enjoy, because there is some phenomenal content that's going to come that is going to be groundbreaking, I'm pretty sure. So let's start. So I'm just going to give an introduction about you to people, for those who are not well versed with what you do. So Brother Faruq McDermott is a distinguished researcher and the founder of Islamic Research into Exotic Phenomena. His work dwells into the intersections of Islamic theology and unexplained phenomena, offering unique insights into how ancient wisdom can inform our understanding of modern mysteries. So the last time what we covered, the topic was the concept of jinn, science, and human origins. Inshallah, today we are going to tackle many other topics which are relevant to the topic of jinn. So, Brother Faruq, welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. How do you feel?
Jazakallah khair for bringing me on today. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. It's a pleasure to hear, by the way, that your viewers enjoyed the last show. I did speak for a long time, and you, mashallah, listened for a long time. So, alhamdulillah that, people enjoyed that, because it was like 3 hours or something, wasn't it? It was a long time. So, I'm pleased to hear that they want to hear more. Jazakallah khair. First, I've got a question. I'm good, by the way. Alhamdulillah. Thanks for asking. I hope you're well. I hope your family's well, my brother. Alhamdulillah. That's a real blessing from Allah. But I just want to ask, what was the feedback from the last show? Did you have it? Did anyone get in contact? Did you get any questions? Because it's quite an odd topic. And you delve into some really cool stuff, but this is really out there, the topic of the jinn, paranormal. What was your own feedback? Did any of your friends or family watch it? What did they have to say?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll start with my own feedback. So I used to do some research on this topic, but after having a conversation with you, it opened up so many different avenues, but not just within the conversation. But when I was editing, because most of the time I edit my own videos. So when I was editing those things and I was trying to collect more resources that you provided, that time I actually went through all of the resources that you provided. And bro, that was like mind boggling for me. I'm like, oh my God, this is a complete subject altogether, which most of the world is not even aware of. So that was mind boggling for me. When it comes to my viewers, alhamdulillah, I got so many positive comments. I did not expect. I thought there will be group of atheists jumping in and saying, oh, this is all nonsense and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But actually many people, after watching the content, started some of them, I received some messages from people about how they love the content and they were asking for more. So this is what I this is one feedback I got. There was one comment I received where someone actually had an experience, and he messaged me a UFO kind of experience. He messaged me, and we also got a few questions, which I tried to address some of them. And yeah, that's it. I think there was one comment that recently came in, and I'm going to ask you one particular question that came.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
So before we dwell into it, like one question I want to, like, as a starter question for our discussion would be, Brother Faruq, like, if there are some people who completely deny the reality of jinn, and they also deny the reality of the UFO phenomena that is very much prevalent, UFO, UAP, NHF phenomena.
Yeah.
What would you have to say to those people who are who say that this all is nonsense? I mean, this does not exist. People are crazy.
That's a very cutting question, isn't it? Like, if someone was to come to you and say, by the way, everything that you talk about, you research, and it's nonsense, I would just say that they are ignorant. And that's not to be rude, but you simply don't know what data is out there available, even to scientists. This is something which is, let's say, having a huge surge of interest amongst the scientific and academic community. The reason being is that data's been made available that hasn't been available for some time. Areas of research and discovery have opened up where they weren't open before. And a lot of the reason as to why people weren't interested in researching this topic, simply because of stigma. If you are, let's say, a well-established scientist working in a physics laboratory, and you start mentioning UFOs or strange phenomena, or faster than light speed travel, all these sort of concepts that a craft would be able to travel at faster than light speed. These are concepts which would, draw bemusement, laughter, and in some cases it may even affect your career. And this has been seemingly a tool of the cover-up. They've used the media and they've used the stories of people who claim to have seen UFOs to discredit the whole topic. Let's say a scientist or somebody in the military sees a UFO. That story, but in the before times, like 20, 30, 40 years ago, these wouldn't really make it to the news. But let's say a man who's, takes drugs and lives on his own in the middle of the woods, that story would make it on the nightly news, and everybody would see it as something to be mocked or laughed at, or only the foolish would believe in. So there's been like that level of stigma that's held people back from delving into this topic. So a lot of the time when people say to you, this is nonsense, it doesn't make sense, there's no truth to this, why would you spend your time researching this, so on and so forth, these are people who are ignorant of, number one, that there's been an actual effort from the intelligence community in America and globally to discredit the research in this. And that's been established. There have been reports from whistleblowers such as Richard Doty. Richard Doty said, I was a agent from, I believe it was from the CIA. He worked on a specific branch of the CIA, whereby his job was to have disinformation. He said, we knew that the topic was real. This was in the 1980s and the 1990s. So he said, we knew the topic was real, but our job was to spread disinformation and to make it seem false. And that's somebody who's a whistleblower who worked on the program that involved causing this disinformation and to make it seem like a stupid, ridiculous topic. So number one, you simply don't know what your own government's been doing to you in order for you to let's say, engineer these thoughts in your mind and these opinions to be so strong. Like, why would you research it? A lot of people are very passionate about that. You're wasting your time. They get angry even sometimes. It's nonsense. Why you? That's not by accident. And they got to that position not on their own thought or through their own research. Like I said at the beginning, they're ignorant. They haven't done the research, but because it's also been deliberately engineered into the general public to treat this topic in such a way. So those are the two main reasons why anyone would think that this is a waste of time or there's no merit to it, is because they've been engineered to think that, and they've definitely haven't put the effort or the research into the actual data and what's available out there. And that's just one whistleblower I've mentioned, brother. In the previous discussion we had, we mentioned quite a few, didn't we? Like David Grusch,
right.
Lou Elizondo, and so on and so forth. These people who came forward and have essentially said they've risked their lives to bring the truth out about these very secretive and very dangerous, in fact, programs that exist within the American government, particularly in the military and the intelligence communities, like, you know, the Pentagon and the CIA and so on. So, yeah, I'll definitely say ignorance and social engineering has caused them to think like that.
Oh, that was very interesting. And specifically, like with those people who actually, as you mentioned, like, you know, are disinformation agents, and they themselves are saying that this was our job and they have been doing. I think this just shows, for if some person comes and says something like this just shows us that the disinformation campaign was very good on point because,
Yeah,
like, you know, it has impacted people in a way where they have been psyoped to believe in a completely materialistic view, and, you know, we can see the effects of him. Like, okay, so he did
yeah.
a pretty good job in manipulating
Oh, for sure.
person.
And I would say that you're from India, right? I would say countries like India and maybe the Eastern, sort of the Indian subcontinent, the Far Eastern, and the sort of Middle Eastern countries, I don't think it's been as effective there. Definitely, there are people who are, let's say, believe that it's all nonsense, and you'll find the vast majority of them come from. They may have been born and grew up there, but they went and they studied in the West, and they entered the universities and colleges of the West, and they come out afterwards with those sort of opinions. But generally, the general public in the eastern region of this planet, as if you like, they aren't as let's say apprehensive to discuss these topics. That's because of culturally, like, you know, people grow up with the belief and the understanding that these things are real. Do you have to seek protection in certain areas? Don't go over there, that's where they are. You know, that man there, he's a magician, stay away from him, and so on. These are like cultural things that we grow up with, but they definitely have a very real impact, particularly in the villages and areas like that where, you know, it's more prevalent, shall we say. And a lot of people blame it on ignorance or backwardness or old-fashioned ancient ideas, but the reality is, Akhi, that I'd say that a lot of these places are far more in tune with the reality of this planet and how it actually works, and this has been deliberately hidden in the West. This is something which is deliberate, it's not by accident. So yeah, the disinformation and the psyops, as you mentioned, these are well constructed, well funded disinformation and psyop operations to mess with the psyche of the human being deliberately, from a very, very young age, all the way up through your university, college and schooling, all the way into business as well. This is, you know, definitely has a huge impact. It's not by accident, and it's well funded, you know. So
Yeah, I think, yeah, that is what our audience, if they are skeptical, they need to do more research and think about what we have said. So moving on to one comment that I received, which I think can dwell into this topic, which can be a good segue to go deep into the topic, is when it comes to, for example, the whole UFO phenomena, UAP, NHI phenomena that is going on, and the topic of Jinn. Now, one person had a comment, how do jinns, when we mentioned that, you know, jinns have something to do with this technology and science and, you know, influencing people for some discoveries as well. He had this question, how do jinns help humans in the development of science? I thought they didn't have the same level of intelligence as humans. In fact, if they did, wouldn't they have developed technologies more advanced than ours? What do you have to say?
Yeah, very good question. I would say that's a cultural understanding of the jinn. You do find, particularly in certain regions, whereby it's traditional to think that the jinn are ignorant or that the jinn are childlike. And there is some truth to that. There is evidence that they are childlike. They're a little bit naive. They do tell stories. I'll give you an example. Like, quite often, if you've ever seen the videos of people who, quote unquote, allegedly do ruqya, and they speak to the jinn through the human being. Well, I'm not going to comment on whether I believe these videos are true or a real representation. But in the video, you will see that quite often, you know, every single time they speak to one of these creatures, allegedly, that he is the son or the grandson or the granddaughter of Iblis. There's something that always, you know, linked to the highest and very ego-sounding claims that these beings allegedly make. Yeah, I'm not saying those stories are true. there are some scholars that I've spoke to as well who have said the same thing, that you know, they view the jinn very naive, very incapable, and not that intelligent. And you know, and there is evidence to suggest that they do say things that are quite obviously made up in some of the stories that I've collected, you know, and it's quite clear that, you know, they're making things up. But that is also prevalent amongst humanity. Someone who asks the question, you know, how comes that, you know, if they are, why haven't they created technology? I would argue that perhaps they have, but just look at how the planet Earth works. You have, I think I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. You have amongst us a huge, wide range of abilities, from, you know, let's say the most advanced laboratories here in Britain, based in Oxford, where we have technologies that are of the leading type within a laboratory setting, dealing with light and physics and how these things work. The Diamond Light Institute over in Oxford is one of the only type of facilities like that, where they are, you know, experimenting with light and what light actually is. You don't have that, let's say, in an island village in the middle of the Polynesian Islands. You don't have that level of technology. So we have, in amongst our own people, a huge, wide range of abilities and technologies. You have in, let's say, the islands of, I forgot the name, the North Sentinel Island, I believe it is, not far from, you know, the coast of India, right? North Sentinel Island, I believe, is a place where we've actually, the rest of the planet has been, you know, according by law, they've protected North Sentinel Island from any outside visitors. And anyone who's flown these sort of drones over the top of this island, these people still kind of live in the, you know, hunter-gatherer stage. They have weapons made of wood with rock heads. They haven't even, as far as I'm aware, they don't even have metal. And their medical facilities are very primitive. They still use the old sort of type of medicine, because whatever they can get from the leaves and from the roots or whatever they're using. Their food is very similar to the hunter-gatherer type style. Maybe some farming is involved, but they collect and they gather fruits and berries, whatever they can from the island they live on. And they are completely unaware of how advanced we've got. If you were to approach one of them and tell them, you know, humanity has made it onto the moon, they're going to deny it. We have satellites flying around this planet. They're not even going to understand what you're telling them, right? So amongst humanity, we have a huge, wide range of abilities according to, you know, different areas of the world. Likewise, I think the jinn would exhibit a similar way of existence. I don't think that they live on the exact same plane of capability. Just like humans don't, the jinn don't. The second thing I want to mention, brother, about this particular topic, you know, the jinn, if you read the literature, particularly from, you know, like Shaykh al-Islam, or from, let's say, the book written by Umar al-Ashqar, I mentioned it before, but it's such a great resource for the topic, and I advise anyone out there who really wants to get into and understand the you know, the world of the jinn, as the name of the book is, The World of the Jinn and Devils. If you really want to understand their world and how it works, you should read that book. It's called The World of the Jinn and Devils by Sheikh Umar al-Ashqar, rahimahullah. Very great scholar. He even mentions the UFO topic in the book because it was relevant when he wrote it. I believe it was back in the 70s when he wrote the book. But he mentions in that book a story from the time of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. And he lifted that story and he placed it in his book because it was relevant. And in that story, and we mentioned it last time, bro, but we'll just cover it again. In that story, he talks about one of the Sufi masters who received a device. And that device is probably not too dissimilar to the smartphone here, whereby it was a shiny piece of glass, which was given to him, and he would be able to communicate and talk to the jinn and ask them questions, and they would show him his followers. And then later on, he would tell his followers, I saw you in the field and you were scratching the back of your head, and, you know, whatever it might have been that he witnessed. And he would use that, and they would think he was a holy man close to God because he had knowledge about what they were doing when he wasn't present. So they like used that as a tool of, you know, misguidance. But in reality, he was just using a device that was given to him by the jinn. That is evidence right there that the jinn had or used some sort of capability, maybe similar to the smartphone, way before humanity did. They also were able to transport objects, as mentioned in the Quran, during the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam, instantaneously. And we are still working towards transportation at an instantaneous manner. Human beings today who have witnessed the UFOs with their technology, like the satellites and so on and so forth, want to be able to emulate that. Britain, America, India, Pakistan, name a country, they're going to want to be able to emulate this type of technology. Why? Because if you're seeing it happen on a global scale, you're seeing an object go from there to there, you want that too. Not only are you able to deliver instant payloads of, explosives, which is obviously very dangerous and it would make you probably the most powerful nation on the planet, but also you can transport goods. This would affect disrupt many of the logistics companies and systems of logistics around the world. Like ships would be kind of almost obsolete. You wouldn't need to send a ship because you can send it instantaneous through, let's say, a portal of some description. So we see in the Quran a description of abilities as such of transporting a throne instantaneously from Yemen to Syria in the blink of an eye. Okay, so we see from that the jinn are not incapable, and they do have capabilities which actually, from our frame of reference, are phenomenal, like things that you wouldn't expect to be able to do. So anyone who would ask the question, what's the evidence, where's the proof, the Quran and the prophetic traditions and the statements of the scholars is the proof there. And it's up to them to then disprove that these events happened, and anyone who's believes that the Quran is the truth, you can see that these stories, like the story of Solomon, isn't just there for fun and amusement and to be amazed by them, but rather there's definitely truth to them, absolute truth to them. And the American government, the British government, they know about the truth of these claims of the Quran, and they want it for themselves. So they'll do anything, whatever it takes to get in contact with the jinn in order to get hold of that technology. So it doesn't really matter if the individual doesn't believe in the abilities and capabilities of jinn and believe them to be naive and ignorant of being able to do things. The fact is the Americans and the British and the Europeans and the global government know that it's true, and they want to get their hands on it. So if you believe or don't believe, they believe it, and they definitely want to get it.
Right. And what the example that you gave, I think, was a brilliant example. I can build on that example where people are from those islands. For example, there was people within that island who are very primitive. We know that they are primitive. So let's say there was actually an alien species that comes on Earth and is only in contact with those people. It would think that all of humanity is just these kind of people. They live like this, they talk like this. But if they don't have access to those technologically advanced human beings who live in the West, who have cars and aircrafts and stuff like that, they would think that all humans might be living a life like this. And I think this can be relevant to many Iraqis who, when they deal with the jinn, I think they themselves say that, those jinns that come around for black magic, because of black magic and stuff like that, those are like the labor class of the jinn, which are sent by the higher beings. So from that perspective, if we are only getting in contact with the labor class, I mean, we would think that all jinns are like this, but they can be like a advanced version, elite class of them, which we cannot get access to.
Like we have, Akhi, even me and yourself, maybe we don't have access to the very best medical technologies that are available. Why? Money prices us out of it. There's certain technologies out there, particularly like the stem cell research that's going on about how to rebuild certain aspects of the human body using stem cells. That's very expensive technology, biotech. And it's not available to me. It's not available to you. We're priced out of the game because it's tens of thousands to get that sort of procedure done. But for the very rich, it's nothing. It's small change for them. So even amongst ourselves, we have this elitism, this class separation according to how much money you earn and so on and so forth. And that's in every country. There's going to be like a class system. I would say in the West, we have our lower level is probably higher than some of the lower levels in other countries, but from the low level to the high level in Britain is a huge gap between the working class and the elite class, and the same in America, and maybe even wider in places like India. Some of your elite class are at the very elite, like they're right up there in the planet, some of the richest people to live today. So there's a huge gap because of wealth. And I'm sure that the jinn have the same gap. They have a wealth gap. They have an elite gap, you know. And if you're talking to someone who don't know about you, you might make some wild and outlandish claims, and to the person hearing them, you're going to think this is just like naive and silly sounding. But that's because they're bragging it, you know. They're just trying to make out to their new friend that like I'm special, when reality is they're not. And it would give that, you know, it would give that opinion to the person hearing it. Oh, the jinn are just naive. And like you said, if you're dealing with the low class, who's, or the lower class, I don't want to say low, but the lower class, working class, labor class, as you called it. I like that word. You would think that, wouldn't you? You'd think that, oh, maybe that's how they're all like, but definitely not. Even amongst, even in the Quran, this is established. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, when Sulaiman alayhi salam, he asked his gathering, one of the Ifrit in Arabic, or the Ifrit, is, it basically means like somebody who's attained a very high level. It's like a master. You know, if you were to say a master swordsmith, somebody who's very good at making swords, or, you know, he's a wizard at a computer, someone who's really made it to the highest levels of computer programming. That's what you would call Ifrit. That word is used for them. But, you know, culturally now, when you hear the word Ifrit, you think of a powerful jinn. That's what, you know, customarily Islam has applied this, you know, meaning of powerful jinn. But the actual technical meaning is someone who's mastered something. So a master from among the jinn said, I'll bring it to you before you rise from your position. And then afterwards, Allah says, but one who had knowledge. So there was a knowledge gap between this master and this other jinn. One who had knowledge of the scripture was able to bring it within the blink of an eye. So look at the knowledge gap even amongst the jinn. There will be one who's powerful and masterful is less powerful than the one who had the knowledge. So amongst humanity, I would suggest that the ones who have knowledge of the jinn, the ones who operate with the jinn at the high levels, like the elites, and that's what's been claimed by the whistleblowers, are the people who have the knowledge of the reality of this planet. They're kind of living in a different reality than we do. Not us, because we're Muslim, but for the rest of the general public, they don't believe this thing's real, and therefore they've created this knowledge gap. I hope I didn't go into a different topic there, but you get what I mean.
No. I think we dealt with this question comprehensively. I think the person who asked this question would get a very good answer. Alhamdulillah.
Hopefully, if they want to ask again, shut in and we'll do a third video, maybe, bro.
Inshallah. So my first, now introducing again, going into the topic. So Brother Faruq, we are witnessing a global psyop where the ancient deception of the jinn is being repackaged as the future of science and salvation. Do you agree or do you disagree?
So, sorry, I'm so sorry. I missed the question because I don't know if you heard it. A ice cream van went by. So go on, say again.
Okay. We are witnessing a global psyop where the ancient deception of the jinn is being repackaged as future of science and salvation. Is that, would you agree with that or you disagree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't know if it will be successful. I don't think it will be successful. But it certainly seems that is what's going on. There is clearly, for those who don't know, there's an effort called disclosure that's currently unfolding in the American press, among the American government. You have congressmen who are involved now in this disclosure project, and that project, in its essence, is to disclose the reality of a non-human intelligence visiting this planet, and that non-human intelligence is more technologically advanced than we are, and that we essentially are at a disadvantage to them. And that currently certain members of the American military, the American intelligence community, are whistleblowing on this reality, and they're coming forward and they're telling the rest of us that we are being visited and have been visited by a non-human intelligence for a long time now. Where does that come into the idea that we are being set up to have this idea these creatures are, you know, more powerful, and that we are essentially below them and that we should serve them? Well, there's a difference of opinion in that. You know, one could argue that some of the American and British view these creatures as adversarial. There is claims, and, you know, these are long-standing claims going back quite a number of years, of a group of let's call them, as they've called them, radical Christians, known as the Collins elite, who have been kind of holding back this disclosure effort because they believe that these creatures are demonic. That's their own, that's the claim that's been made about them. So the reason they've been holding back this effort to bring clarity to these creatures is because we are at a weakness to them. And it's very easy for the naive and uninitiated to see these creatures as almost godlike. And this is where kind of when it boils down to it, the theology, the way in which we interpret these events is where the separation is going to be. And that's why it's going to be some who see them as worthy of worship because of their capabilities, because of their knowledge, and because of the advancements they've made over us. We should worship them because, they are better than us, right? As Iblis said, I am better than you, right? He believed himself to be better than Adam. And there are some of the children of Adam who agree with him. Yeah. We don't agree with it. Yeah. So yeah, this is the problem, right? And then there's the other side, who are the Christian, radical or fundamentalist Christians, as well as us Muslims. I'll put us in the same group where we say, no, they're not worthy of worship. And we would go as far as to say there's no human or jinn worthy of worship, right? I think, maybe some of our Christian brethren are slightly have a different interpretation, right? And they would say, maybe some of humanity is worthy of worship. But, for the sake of agreement here, we are in agreement that these creatures are not worthy of worship. We are also in an agreement that they are tricksters and they do have plans. They generally let people down. They embarrass people. They make humans do humiliating things in order to try and get some sort of, let's say, to have some sort of benefit from them. And it's even mentioned in the Quran that there's a group of humanity in Surah An'am, there's a group of humanity who have made an agreement with the jinn, because on the Day of Judgment, Allah will make this clear. He'll say, company of jinn and men on that day, he will bring forward the jinn. He'll say, you have misled many of mankind, and their allies among mankind will say, yes, some of us made use of others, and we have now reached the term you've appointed us. This is a clear, indication that some of humanity have betrayed the rest of us and kind of sold us out to be the elites for the jinn, if you like. So this is definitely setting up to be a haqq versus batil, as we'd call it, truth versus falsehood situation here. And there's going to be a group of humanity who laud and praise and love and talk, beautifully about the jinn, like Dr. Stephen Greer, a very well-known advocate of disclosure, who sees that these creatures can do nothing wrong, and all negativity, all bad things that have happened in a paranormal setting has been humans masquerading as jinn, right? Humans masquerading as the phenomena. Okay, this is his claim. And in reality, these things are, harmless, and they love humanity and only want good for us. Then you've got, people who want desperately to have the technology, like some of the scientists who have worked on the program, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. We are weaker than them, so we should listen to them. We should do what they say because they're going to take humanity to the next level. So kind of two different approaches to it. Stephen Greer with his love and compassion and care for them, and then the others who just want to get their hands on the technology, but both saying that we should be careful and be afraid of them because they're so powerful, so we just kind of bend the knee to them and do what they wish. So it does set up that as the paradigm that we're entering into this world. And just to add a little bit on the end, brother, I don't want to burn this question out, but we do see from this particular topic, it's kind of like an unstitching or an unraveling of atheism and materialism. People who before would have adamantly said that there's nothing but the physical world are now taking back their words, and they desperately want to know the hidden secrets about the reality of existence. And they see that this key, or this door, should we say, to this knowledge is the topic of the phenomena. So therefore, they're willing to do what it takes to understand, just to know the truth and the secret as they view it. And therefore, they're willing to do what it takes to get access to it. Some rumors and some claims have been made that these creatures, the phenomena, as they call it, have refused to divulge the secrets of their technology and other secrets about the truth of where we come from and what we're doing here, or that they've said that they are our creators directly, that we are, modified apes, that they genetically modified apes. And the reason they haven't come forward and, revealed themselves to humanity in an open way is because we are not worthy. We're too held on to our, let's say, vintage beliefs, to our ancient stories, like the story of creation or religion. And they've directly blamed religion. They've said religion is one of the key reasons why the phenomena hasn't come out and open. And the day or the time when humanity abandons religion and abandons the old way and abandons its previous beliefs that have caused so many conflicts, as they've claimed, then the phenomena will come forward. So this has caused a group of the people who deal with this topic to view religion very unfavorably, and that we are the actual reason why humanity isn't progressing. It's because we have these backwards religious views, and these creatures are not going to engage with us until we abandon them and give them up. So, I know there's a few things I've said there, bro, you might want to unpack, but yeah, hopefully that.
That's a good segue, because now the next topic that I wanted to talk about was the role of IREP itself in all this. So what is IREP and what is the main goal of IREP here? So I think that can directly tackle the previous topic.
Inshallah. So yeah, IREP, Islamic Research into Exotic Phenomena. We're just a small group of I would say around sort of 7 or 8 brothers. I've never counted. And then we've got a community group, which you're part of as well. And we've got, maybe more. There's like 50, I think, or something in there. But essentially what we do is we just, any stories or any information we get surrounding a topic of the phenomena, whether that be an abduction event or a whistleblower coming out in the news, and we share that information in our on WhatsApp, and then we filter everything through an Islamic filter. So what we essentially what we tried to do, my light just went out, sorry brother. What we essentially tried to do in essence is understand the topic of the phenomena through the Islamic lens. And our role in this is to bring clarity to the people in the UFO community who are interested in a paranormal. We want to give clarity to the Islamic position. So we want them to understand that Islam does have a lot to say about this. It's a book from the Creator, from God. So therefore, if there's any truth to this, Allah would talk about it and pre-warn us, give us information about it. And, if it's completely false and untrue, then it will never have a great impact on mankind. Why? Because there's no way that if a book is from the Creator, that he would leave such a gap as to something as phenomenal and amazing as another world right next to our own that's interfering and interacting with us. It would be a huge gap to leave that missing from a book that's meant to guide us until the end of times. But alhamdulillah, all praise be to God, there is so many verses and so many hadith from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that delve into this topic, that really gives clarity and really gives a foundational understanding as to what's going on here. So first and foremost, I'd say IREP exists to bring clarity to the topic and to guide.
So just one. So previously you gave us some examples of how these phenomena is trying to even manipulate us into think that they are our creators, and many other things many other stuff that they're trying to do to manipulate us in a way. So is if I'm not wrong, the goal of IREP here is to actually clarify to the people, how we are being misled in some way. Is that correct?
Yeah, to clarify what the phenomena is. They're misleading the elites. There's no doubt about it. There are a lot of claims of the elites being involved in strange practices, the Epstein type things, harming people, harming humans, in order to maintain their positions. It's well known that Iblis wants to mislead and misguide mankind. This is what he does. And him and his foot soldiers go out every day trying to cause disruption among men and their wives, families and their children, and so on and so forth. So we want to bring clarity to the people about what the actual intentions of the phenomena is. And our evidence is the Quran and Sunnah. So it's taught, the Quran and the prophetic traditions have mentioned in many cases about these creatures, where what they're made from, how they shapeshift, how they can fly, how they can dive, how they can travel through space, all of these sort of things that are, you know, in common with the UFO phenomena. And the reason that that information's in there, so that we can make that connection between the UFO phenomena and the jinn, and it brings clarity to what is actually going on here. So anyone who's had, say, an abduction event, for example, Islam talks about the abduction event. We have it in the traditions. The scholars of Islam have talked about it. It's mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So that the jinn go out, spread out, and they kidnap. So we have to take these hadith at face value and accept that they are true. And then we apply them to this UFO story, and we see that this is the jinn that's doing it. So once you know who's behind what's going on, that mystery kind of starts to dissolve, and you get a feeling for what's going on here. Then you see that the elites are in contact with them, okay, through what the whistleblowers are saying, and an elite group of humanity works with them and kind of like hides it from the rest of us. Once you see that the Quran talks about that elite group too, you get you get that foundational understanding that these things are controlling not us all, but in particular they're controlling and manipulating the elites against us. So we are at a place, a crossroads now, as things are developing, that IREP is playing that role of reconnecting. I would say, I'll go this far just to simplify it. We are trying to reconnect humanity with the truth about their origins, and the truth about the purpose of being here on this world, and the role that this phenomena plays on this world. It's a way bigger role than us Muslims even sometimes know. The phenomena is playing a huge role. The jinn, Iblis, and his soldiers are playing a huge role in modern politics, but we don't realize it. It's playing a huge role in modern warfare. Iblis himself wants humans to fight one another, and he plays a role in that. And we need to be aware and understand that the jinn are involved in this too. So yeah, number one is to bring clarity about the actual reality of the jinn, and what their purpose is with us. So yeah, that's definitely one of the main goals of IREP, and that's for non-Muslims and Muslims too, you know.
Okay, yeah, and so I have so many questions, you know. Sometimes I just keep thinking which one should I give priority to. So since you mentioned about human origins, I heard Brother Imran was mentioning once, if I'm not wrong, that you are, I think, working on a whole series for to clarify our human origins. Is that correct? I just want give us some insight about it, what you are working on.
Yeah, so it's I've thought about it many times. That the first idea I came up with was like a short series of just face to camera type information, bring it up on YouTube. Then I've gone with a bit more outlandish and let's say much more cinematic version, where, you know, we make it a lot more interactive, a lot more fun and dramatic, if you like. And I still haven't settled on it, but in essence, I want to talk about the children of Adam and what it means to be the son of from the children of Adam, because knowing who we are and who our father is, the father of humanity, Adam, and his weaknesses, and that we inherited from him, and knowing our purpose in this world, and knowing the fragility of the human experience, because we are the son of Adam, but also the honor and power and amazing capabilities that Allah has given us as well, and the opportunities that we have in this world to make it to the next world, Al-Jannah, hopefully, to bypass the difficulties of the Day of Judgment and things like this. I would say this is I'd say it's a research into reconnecting us with who we are, and hopefully through that, people will have a better view about what it means to be a human being and how amazing we are. Like, not a lot of people walk around on a day-to-day basis believing that they're not from here. We're not from planet Earth. We are made from Earth, but our home is Adn, the Garden of Eden. That's our home. So quite often, I've mentioned this before, but I'll say again, a lot of people have this ache inside them where they haven't quite reached, let's say, their capabilities. And inside yourself, you feel like there's more. I could have more. And I think this goes from bottom to top, from the poor to the rich, that there's this feeling that there's more available to them. And sometimes a rich person gets everything he ever wants and he's still not satisfied. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, you know, if the son of Adam was to be given a valley of gold, he would desire another valley, and nothing will quench that desire until death. So when you die, this feeling will go because you're no longer here to have that feeling. But I think it's born from the reality that our souls were not created here, but rather our souls were created in al-akhirah, in the hereafter, and that our bodies may be from this planet, but our soul and our father Adam, he experienced a different creation, the creation of Jannah, which is completely different. And it is satiating to mankind. Nothing pleases mankind. He wants more and more and more. And Jannah is exactly that. It's better and better and better. You know, have you ever had the best food you ever had? You have it the first time, it's amazing. Second time is amazing. Third time, it's amazing. But it's never as good as the first time. Jannah's the opposite. The first time you have it, it's amazing. Next time you have it, it's even better. And it's even better and even better and even better. And it keeps getting better and better and better. And that is something which is ingrained in us. And that's why quite often satisfaction is almost impossible in this world, to fulfill that, to satiate, to satisfy that feeling of desire. Yeah. And nothing will do that until you make it to Jannah. And this is something which vast majority of us suffer with, bro. So reconnecting us to who we are and where we're from, what we're doing here is really, really, really important. And it almost puts everything into perspective. That's why when you realize that Jannah is the real world, as Allah mentions, you know, the next life is the real life, if only they knew. Once you realize the next life is real and that this thing that we're going through is merely just a simple test, you then don't hanker after it. This is kind of not even the starter dish. This is like, you know, you're just in the waiting room before the real event happens. So in the waiting room, you don't want to get too distracted because you might miss your opportunity to go to Jannah. So you start to see the dunya for what it is. It's valueless. As Allah said in a hadith Qudsi, that if this world was worth the wing of a mosquito, if this dunya, not the world, the dunya, the entirety of existence in this universe, should we say, if it was worth the wing of a mosquito, Allah would not give one who rejects him and dislikes him and doesn't believe in him a drink of water. If it was worth just one wing of a mosquito, not two. I know mosquito needs two wings to fly, right? So a valueless, small, little, thin piece of creation like a wing of a mosquito, if it was even worth this much to the Lord, he wouldn't let those who reject him, who hate him, who disbelieve in him, a glass of water. So when you realize that as a Muslim and as a son of Adam, should we say, when you realize that this world is nothingness, then any difficulty that happens becomes like a wing of a mosquito. You lost a family member, a wing of a mosquito. If it was valuable to Allah, he wouldn't have let it happen. Right. Oh, I lost somebody. I lost money. My business failed. I haven't got anything and everything's gone wrong. It's the wing of a mosquito. Having this perspective, when you approach this world and this dunya, it takes away the edge of it and you worry less. And then you prepare for Jannah more. Why? Because that's where the real reward is. So it makes you grateful to Allah, because real gratitude comes when you realize that having nothing is sometimes better, right? As crazy as it sounds. So I hope I haven't gone too far with it there, but I hope you understand that that's what my research will reconnect us with, inshallah. I don't know how long it'll be. It might be 2, 3, 4, 10 episodes. Who knows? But yeah, that's the intention.
Inshallah. I mean, I'm very keen to actually, for this project to actually unravel and get executed, inshallah. And I would love to offer any help that
Oh yeah, I'll contact you, bro, if I need it. Often with these things, it's not really the help you need; it's motivation, And the thing is, like, we all have a life. Things are going on with jobs. We're doing so. Most of the stuff, all of us at IREP, like, there's no money. We just do this, like you, brother. We just do this for the sake of Allah. We do it for the dawah, and we hope that on the day when maybe we're one of the blessed ones who don't even have our deeds weighed. But let's say we end up having our deeds weighed. We'll have something to be weighed at least. So, alhamdulillah.
I mean, I'll accept it. So now there's one very important topic that I think we can discuss about, which is plasma physics. What is plasma physics, and does this have any connection with the jinn?
Okay, I will have to preamble this or by saying that this is opinion mostly, because the nature of the jinn is unknown. The actual nature of the jinn, we have described to us what they're created from, and this is where the idea of plasma and jinn come from, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that he created jinn from a smokeless or scorching fire in the Quran. And the scholars have discussed this, and more recently one of the scholars, and I'll have to send you the quote, Akhi, and I'll send it to you. It's from a book that I read more recently, but he said that if you were to set a fire on the other side of a rock, and the heat of that fire would pass through the rock without you actually seeing the fire. It's a very strange description of the fire that they're made from. But why there's I believe, or I wouldn't say believe, but why I theorize, should I say, or carry the opinion that perhaps that plasma physics is related to the world of the jinn, is because there are a number of documented phenomena to do with plasma. I'll give you an example. There is such a research that was done, I believe, by a couple of Japanese students, whereby they looked at quantum coherent plasma holography. And that within that concept, you have the idea that plasma as a holograph would be able to constitute any image that you could imagine. In fact, with the correct condition, it's a theory, it's a theory within plasma physics. But what they're talking about in theory is having the ability to constitute a image of any description, make it look real, because it would. Plasma is a very odd and strange material. Normally, when you're children, you study solid, liquids, and gases, but there are other types of matter, and plasma is one of them. And the jinn, they constitute a type of material that can holographically change. They can look like a human. They can look like someone that a dead loved one, for example. We know that they're not made from bones and flesh like we are, but they can look like they have. And that is where plasma comes into it, because plasma is just a different type. You can have a solid, liquid, and gas form of many different elements, and plasma is just a form of that element that's different. It doesn't have or carry the electrons, so therefore it operates in a different state of matter, so to speak. So it can look like a human being, identical to a human being, but it doesn't carry the electron. So I'm not saying that's exactly what the jinn are, but that's where that relationship comes from, that plasma exhibits an odd and strange and very controlled area of science, might I add, yeah, whereby the scientific community, to work on certain elements of plasma research, you have to carry certain permits and be working at certain laboratories and, be funded by certain funding in order to be able to work on the technology that's related to these things. So it would be an easier area to control because of these type of restrictions on it. So yeah, look, it's theoretical, but I would say that the jinn and them being made from a fire, so to speak, could constitute them being made from a plasma type material, whereby they can holography look like anything that they want. But it's just a theory, bro.
No, but I find this theory very interesting. Of course, we are speculating here because we don't have anything definitive from our scriptures. But this is where I think we can dive into Robert Temple's work, A New Science of Heaven. You have anything to mention about that? Because I think that is where we can see some overlap with what we are discussing in TS.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about what they call Kordylewski clouds. I may be saying that wrong. Kordylewski clouds. And you're also talking about complex dusty plasmas. So in Robert Temple, go on. So Robert Temple, in his work, he done a book, and it's a fascinating book. Did you go through it?
I still have to go,
Okay, yeah. So
I got a summary of it.
No, I mean, to be fair, his work is fantastic aid for our type of research. He's gone through all of the older sort of research papers going back to the 1800s to the early 1900s all the way till now. And he brings together his book is called A New Science of Heaven. And I would advise anyone out there who's interested in this topic to read that book, or to at least get the audio version of that book. It's been a while since I went through it, and I only went through it once, and it blew my mind. And I wanted to go back through it and take notes, because I was just listening to it driving the van. But what I can tell you from memory is that he talks about this, and you can look it up. You can Google it. It's very simple, but they're called complex dusty plasmas. And what his research, or what he's collated of research, I don't think he's a researcher, he's more of a science writer, but he's in contact with real researchers, physics, and people who work in biophysics as well. He is in contact with these people. He's very close to the academics in these fields. And he pulls out the idea of a complex dusty plasma, which is also known as a Kordevsky cloud. I always say the guy's name wrong, but he's a Russian scientist who came up with this theory. But essentially, they say that there's these huge clouds of plasma that exist just outside of the planet. Absolutely massive. But they're so massive, yet in the way that they are constructed, they exhibit some properties that indicate that they are alive. And he says that, in their and I can't really delve into the absolute detail of why they came up to that conclusion, but I'll give an example. He said that it has properties to it and links that show that there are processes going on in these clouds that seem to be coherent across the whole cloud. And there seems to be some functions within the cloud that from our perspective, i.e. the people looking at these clouds and researching them, they tend to be operating like a human body would, where they have some areas that seem to be functioning as like a liver, for example.
Wow.
Sounds odd, sounds very strange, but it's definitely, I would say, definitely worth looking into. His work also talks a lot about ball lightning and other weird plasma effects, because ball lightning, electricity is a type of plasma, as they say, or has been alluded to. But these type of plasma phenomena, he talks about them as well in his book, as well as the phenomena of death and how it relates to light, and that there's a mass of the soul. And he kind of gets all these fringe scientific views and he brings them together in his book, talking about heaven in a different light, meaning the universe, but also the existence of the soul and the phenomena and so on and so forth. But yeah, I gotta say, if I'd known, I would have done a little bit more of that research before I came on and spoke to you about it. Perhaps next time we'll delve really into his work. We'll both finish his book again. I'll take notes and we'll get it. But it's very interesting stuff, and a lot of it blew my mind. Yeah, I've got to say.
Yes, inshallah. So why are we even discussing about plasma is because now when I see what is newly coming up when it comes to plasma, and what some scientists, maybe it might be a fringe minority, but they are talking about this fourth state of matter, scientists and researchers, and they are indicating that the phenomena could be made of plasma. There are some researches that have come out. I think I was going through this paper, which is titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Extraterrestrial Life, Plasma, Shapeshifters, Reptilicons, Thunderstorms, Lightning, Hallucinations, Aircraft, Disasters, Ocean Sightings. That's such a big name. So this paper actually is an 80-page document, which I was covering that all of these strange phenomena, the UFO phenomena, also can be linked to plasma. And actually, the paper suggests that they call it plasmoids. I think they arrange complex behavior. They engage in complex behavior. They say, and I'm quoting the paper. They engage in complex behavior, and what could be construed as complex behavior and evidence of intelligence. So in the sense, they are alluding that they are conscious. Previously, they also mentioned that this could be indicative that they are conscious and intelligent. So is this an indication of the jinn?
This is a very good question. I've totally forgot about plasmoids. This was also in his book. He talks a lot about plasmoids and the research that's gone on from there. It's quite old, actually. It goes back to I think even the 20s or a little bit earlier than that, the idea of a plasmoid, and they were looking at the behavior of plasmoids in a vacuum, and like you said, they seem to exhibit some sort of life bearing properties or behave like a life would in certain scenarios. We are very limited here as human beings because the world in which we live has limitations. As Allah has veiled us from a lot of his creation, we don't see angels, we don't see the jinn, we don't see the world of the angels or the world of the jinn, and to that extent we don't see how they interact with our world. So even though they can come and interact with our world, we don't see that interaction, and we may see the byproduct of it in some cases, but not entirely exactly how it's working. So when it comes to like you said, the plasmoid theory of it being, it definitely could be some sort of link to the jinn, because of our observation of it is that, according to what we understand, it could be alive or exhibit some sort of intelligence, should we say. But on the same time, we don't know that what our experiment is and what effect it's having on their world. I'll give you an example. In the microbiotic world, and I love using this analogy, but in the microbiotic world, if let's say your body starts acting up, or there's some sort of change in the environment of your microbial system inside you, it causes illness to us, or it can cause a change in your health, it can make you sick. So you go to the doctor, and the doctor will investigate the microbiology in your body, and he'll say that, oh, you have an infection, or you have a pathogen that's entered your body and it's made you sick. So he'll be able to identify that, and then he'll give you a medicine that will counteract it, right? Likewise, when we do these experiments in the world of the jinn, we don't know the effect that it's having on their world, right? So we can't really say for sure what's just happened from their perspective. So perhaps when we do these experiments, when we work with these plasmas, because it is related to their existence in theory, I'm not saying in reality, because again, it's just a theory that we have, that plasma and the world of the jinn is a connected thing. But when we play around with these things, we don't know what's happening and what effect it's having on their world. So what we might constitute as life, or something that seems like life or has some sort of consciousness to it, it may be just an effect of the world that they live in. Or it could be that we're causing some sort of something to happen to one of them that makes them, because we're playing around with the essence of their world. So it's causing an effect on them, just like the microbial world having a change in it causes an effect on us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Clearly, yeah. Was that clear?
No, I got what you're trying to say. And we have to be very careful when it comes to these topics, because we are not making any definitive claims here, and it should not seem like we are making a definitive claim.
No, exactly. And that's speculation, what I said there. Like, I'm just saying that because it exhibits strange properties when we do these experiments, doesn't necessitate that it's a life form, and because we don't know, there is a lot of speculation. Like, I'm just speculating that we could be causing an effect on it. We may not be. But in general, the way Allah's created us is the world within us. If we affect it, it causes an outward effect on ourselves. If we play around with the atomic world, it causes an effect in the microbial and the world that we live in. So there's layers to our existence, and what's not to say that this continues it through the layers. So the world of the jinn that looks into our world and can affect and change our world, that in some way our world doesn't affect theirs.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because this paper is actually suggesting that UFOs are plasmoids, and the plasma orb, sometimes we see those orbs, those are also made from plasma. So there's one more interesting thing regarding this paper, which says that even people at NASA report seeing plasmoids. They have been reported to be attempting to look, it seems like as if they are trying to look inside the window when they are the NASA people are in space, from window to window, and also report to attempt to harass the aircraft in some way. So since it seems to be like a kind of a live behaving behavior, like a behavior that exhibits life, a behavior that shows that they are conscious. And then if it is linked to the UFO phenomena, I think still, if we are speculative here, but still, I mean, it is somewhat plausible to say that yes, it is making a plausible case that this is relevant to the Jinn topic.
I'd say yeah. The reason why, because sometimes, like as a Muslim, I don't want to live in a fear of not making a link that seems to be quite obvious. Like if something, we have a proverb here in the UK: if it walks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So if something shows all of the properties and we know the Jinn are conscious. Why? Because we are conscious. And there are two that are held to account for their consciousness. And that is the human being and the Jinn. This is what we believe, right? As Muslims, this is a fact. So if something exhibits life or consciousness and is made of a flame or a type of flame, or what flame is made from, plasma, and it is affecting and spooking and scaring people and having an effect on, then it's more than likely the Jinn. Like, I don't have to die on that hill and say, I swear to Allah that event over there was a Jinn, and anyone who disagrees with it is a kafir. I'm not saying that. I'm not creating a situation where you have to believe. But at the end of the day, if it exhibits all of the properties of the Jinn, I'm going to just say, yeah, I don't have a problem with it being the Jinn. Like, I'm not going to argue with you and make you say that it is, nor am I going to say that it has to be that. I will just simply say that the best explanation we have is it's probably the Jinn. It's probably more than likely the Jinn. Why? Because it exhibits the same properties and phenomena that the Jinn normally would manifest. Another thing I want to add about plasma research, there was a UK research done. It was done in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was secret at the time, but it was released a few years ago, maybe even a decade ago now, I think. But it's called Project Condign. And Project Condign, the actual scientists who worked on this project have never been revealed. They never actually told us who the scientists were who worked on it, but they were tasked allegedly by the government to investigate the UFO phenomena, and their conclusion also that it was a plasma phenomena that can't essentially be repeated or controlled. So there's no basis for a scientific research because it can't be repeatable and controlled in an environment where we can grab it and experiment on it and so on and so forth. So they kind of just said, yes, it's a weird plasma phenomena. We don't know exactly how it works or what happens. It's probably related to the atmosphere in some way or form, or related to planetary phenomena that we don't quite understand yet. That's what they said, but they put it in the realms of plasma, which is another interesting thing. And again, throughout this topic, you'll see the nature of plasma coming up, and the fact that Allah didn't need to tell us what the Jinn were made from. He didn't need to say that they're made from a smokeless fire or a type of plasma life. He didn't need to say that, but he did, and I don't think for no reason. It's not information that has no benefit. Oftentimes Muslims, we need to be aware that there is certain knowledge that doesn't carry a benefit with it, but the Quran doesn't constitute that. There's not a verse of the Quran that carries no benefit. There are certainly verses of the Quran that we cannot explain or fully understand or fully comprehend, but they carry a purpose. And sometimes that purpose will be made clear in hereafter. Sometimes that purpose will be understood fully later on. I'll give you an example. There is in the Quran where Allah said that they would win. There would be a fight between the Romans and the Persians, and the Romans would win in the lowest land, or another interpretation, in the nearest land. The nearest land made sense because the nearest land to the Arabs at that time was Sham. But later on, we came to know that geologically the lowest place on planet Earth happened to be in the area near Sodom and Gomorrah, which is where this battle took place. So therefore we can see we can see the relevance of the lowest meaning later on. It wasn't understood that it was a geological miracle of the Quran until later, when we could create the instruments to measure where the lowest point on earth is. My point is that these statements of the Quran may not have been fully understood at all times, but there may be times where they become more, they have that extra layer of understanding is almost like a miracle for the people of their time. And one could argue that the nature of the creation of the jinn has much more of a relevancy today than it perhaps it did in them days, purely from a scientific investigative speculation, because of people like the UK and the USA doing research onto the jinn, trying to figure out what they are, where they came from, what they're doing, so on and so forth. And these investigations say that they are plasmas. So yeah.
No, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
No, that made a lot of sense. I mean, this is something that I don't think anyone covers it. And I think at least we have to put one view on the table, if it is a plausible view of what we see with the research related to plasma and, the jinn phenomena. And if there is so much of stuff that overlaps, I mean, this is a plausible view. This might be something that people have not investigated much in. In fact, the project online where you were mentioning, I found it really interesting. One, I was just going to mention that, and mashallah, you already mentioned. One quotation from that was very interesting. You already mentioned, but I just want to highlight that they say that some UAP sightings are attributable to exotic atmospheric plasma phenomena. So it is very interesting that now we also have a science related to maybe understanding a bit of their nature in some sense. There is one doctor, Dr. Massimo Teodrani. That's actually, I mean, Dr. Massimo Teodrani, he's an astrophysicist who has investigated the possibility. Again, he also makes the same case of certain unexplained luminous phenomena like lights could be manifestations of intelligent plasma structures. I mean, he also uses some studies and tries to back up his case. So this is a growing body of evidence that is coming up slowly, I think. And like what you always mention, I mean, we already have some information about the jinn in some or the other form. So I find, to be very honest, me personally, I find this link with very, very fascinating.
Yes,
I don't know what viewers would make of it, but I thought that this is important to address. Anyway, so next topic that I want to move on, and I think this is going to be very interesting, is the topic of ontological shock. So now many scientists who have apparently been having a materialistic view, scientists and researchers. Previously, people who used to have experiences with the jinn were people who were, because of they were not coming from a credible, they did not have great credentials. It took, people could easily discredit their experiences. But now, leading scientists, astrophysicists, those researching in quantum physics, those are researching in evolutionary biology, for example, they are having experiences. And then this is a very big ontological shock for them when they come to know that, oh, so there is another being that lives on this planet with us. And, we were all fed with this kind of materialistic view that gives them a shock to the point where it gives them some kind of a depression or anxiety, and they can't even take that reality. Do you have anything to address about this topic?
Yeah. So I do actually think that this is important, because it goes back to something we discussed earlier about where this topic is actually going now. And I think that if just to give a little foundational perspective on it from an Islamic worldview, like in the time of Shaykh al-Islam, he does discuss that the people who were the scientists of the day, the alchemists as they were, they talked about and disclosed, and Shaykh al-Islam wrote about their experiences working on their scientific discoveries often overlapped with the world of the jinn, in the sense that one of the scientists, or one of the alchemists, said that he used to hear a voice coming out from birds, animals, or even from plants. One of them actually said a plant spoke to him, and that plant disclosed to him the beneficial properties inside the plant and the process of which how to extract the beneficial properties. So how you should process me, the plant, how you should process me and extract the part of me that you want to extract, which I find fascinating, because there are rumors and rumblings from the researchers who work on the UFO topic that they see the craft in of itself that they've recovered as being conscious and speaking to them. It's bizarre, isn't it? But when you have the story we have from 1200 years ago, roughly, of Sheikh al-Islam saying that they're working on plants and the plants were speaking, these guys are working on these craft and the craft is speaking. This creates that situation of an ontological shock, that you would be a researcher working on a craft, a piece of metal that you found, that yes, it may seem to be anomalous and it's come from a different thing, but ultimately you would be assuming it's either adversarial tech or otherwise that has been discovered or found, and you've been told to work on it, and then all of a sudden it starts talking to you. It changes your worldview instantaneously. It would even change your view of what life actually is. A living technology sounds bizarre. It's not a stretch for us. We know from the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the jinn sometimes, not in every case, but sometimes would inhabit the statue. And he did command Khalid bin Walid to destroy one of the statues, which he did. And then he went back and he said to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to Rasulullah, "Ya Rasulullah, I destroyed the idol." And Muhammad said, "You haven't. Go back." And then when he went back there, he found what looked like a female, but wasn't. It was a jinn with disheveled hair, unclean. And, he dealt with the situation, but it was a jinn that inhabited the statue. And then when he destroyed the statue, the jinn had nowhere to live. It was exposed. But that's why that particular tribe, I think they were from Taif, they were very much sure that the idol was going to fight back, but it didn't, because it couldn't, because it's just a piece of stuff. But these people, when they experience these things in these laboratories, when they hear these voices coming out of technology or coming out of a metal or coming out of, something that they would never assume would be able to live, they become confused and they start to think this thing is living. It's a living technology, when in reality, it's just a jinn inhabiting this thing. And that's where the confusion comes from. And that's where the ontological shock comes from. And when you're in shock, Akhi, when you fall into these, into shock, you become vulnerable, and not in a sense that what was the track that you were on of understanding, the boxed in worldview that kept you straight, that I'm going this way and this is what I'm doing. Once you take away those walls, it's kind of like anything becomes possible then, because what you knew in foundational reality is shattered. And it can be replaced with something else, and you become vulnerable to a misunderstanding of the experience that you had. And you can be told or misled that these are, the gods of old, as some of the people have claimed that the jinn or UFO phenomena is actually the gods of the Greeks or the gods of the, Vikings. So Thor, and whatever else. And this is the claims that have been made. Certain even the gods of the people of Pharaoh, it's been claimed that what these people inside these secret well, I always forget astaghfirullah, the program, they call it the program, but the legacy program, that these people are actually dealing with ancient gods. That's what they've said. They've said it out loud. So these are them, and that can only occur when you shatter the world's view that you've had of reality, and it can be replaced and say, actually, these things are ancient gods, and people could believe it. Why? Because they've heard a ship of a flying saucer speak to them. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah. So mashallah, that was brilliant. I mean, one thing that, I want you to cover, I think, which the audience would love it. And, you covered it brilliantly previously, which I heard. And, I also enjoyed it. Was this case, one specific example of Mike D. Masters, and what kind of ontological shock he had, and he was an evolutionary biologist himself, and this shattered his whole understanding of reality in some sense. Can you give us that case study?
I'll mention it briefly because he does a really good job, and I think we'll probably link it on your show, right? But he actually goes through it himself, and his experience. He was, I think, an evolutionary biologist, if I'm correct, and he didn't believe in any of this sort of stuff. And when he had an event that occurred to him that he didn't know if it was real or not, he ended up having a conversation with a light in his garden. And he said it was a really bizarre thing. He'd never had any experience like that before. And he didn't know if it was real. He didn't know if it was just a constitution of thought inside his mind that manifested itself in a way that, like, let's say I've got a light on right here, and it's like me looking at my light above me and then, materializing this conversation in my mind. So he was confused as to what actually happened. But then later on, he was invited to speak at an event. And it just so happened that at the same time there was a UFO, I may be getting some of the details wrong, so you have to forgive me. But in any case, he ends up at this event, and then he goes outside, and then what happens to him is that people that he knew or vaguely knew spoke to him, but it wasn't them; it was somebody else speaking through them in multiple cases, and their mouths were in sync. So they were all speaking, but he had one voice, but their mouths were all moving at the same time. Something bizarre like that happened. And he ended up in some sort of trance state. And then he had information that he said was almost downloaded to him. And they were speaking to his consciousness. So he had a discussion with consciousness with this creature or this entity. He I think what he explains, he almost sees it like a godlike figure, because that's the only thing that he had from his own understanding that would have the capabilities of speaking to somebody's consciousness as a voice inside his mind, right? Whilst also manifesting these people's lips moving at the same time. Something bizarre like that. Again, my memory is a little hazy on it. I only listened to his story once. But the bit that stayed with me, I'll say this, is he said afterwards that he became depressed because it was so jarring and shocking to the worldview that he had that he didn't know how to go on with things. It was so disruptive to the world that he understood, and it changed everything for him. And when you listen to his story, I believe him. I believe that what he experienced was jarring enough that it changed his worldview, and he did have ontological shock. And the next day, he did see the guy who, because there was three of them, there's a lady and two guys, I believe. But it wasn't them that was speaking, it was this entity was speaking through them. And then when he saw him, he said, I saw the guy the next day and I became very afraid. And because I didn't know how to deal with the situation. It was something so foreign and strange to me. And I think that people who have experiences, especially someone of the let's say the credibility of a Michael P. Masters, who held positions who were lauded for their scientific research. When you get a pivotal character like them, someone who is like, known in the scientific community, I'm not sure if I'm certain that he's, very high up there. I couldn't tell you if he was, I know he's a professor, so he's about as high as you can get, but I don't know if he was like, put forward for any prizes or anything like that. But it's possible. Like, he's very high up, very well respected in the field of, research that he's part of. Somebody like him, a pivotal character in a academic scientific research, having such an event and then becoming vocal and speaking to others about it, it is a change of tide, if you ask me. It kind of changes the discussion,
right?
From having like there's him, and then there's also I always forget his name, brother, the guy who's Astaghfirullah wa tubu ilayh. He's a professor as well, and he was put forward for a Nobel Prize. He's a biologist.
Gary Nolan.
Huh?
Gary Nolan.
Gary Nolan. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Gary Nolan, Michael Master, these are people at the forefront of their field of science who are becoming vocal about this. So we have the intelligence community whistleblowers, and now we have academic scientific researchers who are whistleblowers, you know, who are stepping forward and speaking up about their experience and the shock that came with it. This, for me, is a change of tide, and that this is swaying towards more of that we need that for them creating a need, shall I say, to investigate this from a scientific, rational perspective. And I think that, like going back to what we talked about earlier, I think they are going to present this as almost godlike, where they're going to connect the mythology of the past to this topic and say, look, we can't look at these stories now as just mythos, but rather there seems to be some truth behind it, and that these creatures or this phenomena seems to be at the, you know, at the forefront of these stories from history, and that we should take seriously this topic and try to understand, or if not communicate with these things in order to understand their intentions, which will cause a mass ontological shock, i.e. there'll be a lot of people out there once the scientific community gets behind this, and we have changes. I was talking about this yesterday, but we have a change in education whereby the children at a very young age are educated about the phenomenon, they're brought up knowing about it. That's going to have to be a very quick change of shall we say, culture in the education sector.
Right.
And that's going to be shocking for the people that are older, not so much for the youngsters, but a lot for the older people who have lived their life in this box. And once you shatter that worldview, once you shatter that worldview, Afi, anything goes, and people will come and this is what it is, this is what it is, and you're going to create like this almost hybrid understanding of reality. And that's where Islam comes in, bro. And IREP as well, I'd say. Us being here, us having a platform to discuss this topic openly, without mockery, without, you know, and allowing people to tell their stories and hear their experiences, whilst we provide them with the foundation of what this thing is, and a foundation, a kind of like an anchor point of reality, that no matter how wild and crazy it's going to get out there. I mean, it's been crazy last few years, right? Starting with lockdown, then we had the transgender phenomena that spread through a lot of people, you know, out of nowhere. People were chopping their body parts off and changing their name. Bizarre behavior. As well as now we've got this UFO phenomena and so on and so forth. You know, Islam provides the anchor point for humanity, and that anchor point is an anchor point of understanding that keeps us grounded, keeps us solid, and keeps us firm as to the reality of who we are, what we're doing here, and where we're going thereafter.
And that was a brilliant explanation, mashallah.
Jazakallah khair.